Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Worship Team Podcast. My name is Alex Infiegin and I am your host. Today is episode 17 of the podcast and I am talking with Chris Vacher, who is a well-known worship blogger. His blog actually, for the last 2 years, has won Worship Leader Magazine's Best Of. And Chris is also the creative arts pastor at C4 Church in Ontario, Canada. So I'm really stoked to talk to Chris today about what you should be spending your time on in between Sundays. Chris has a passion for making sure that worship leaders are well equipped to do a great job, not just standing on the stage, but of all the little things that happen in between. So today we talk about how to spend your time effectively in between Sundays. So let's get right into the episode today with Chris Vacher. Hey everybody, I am here with Chris Vacher, who is a blogger on all things worship related, and also the creative arts pastor for C4 Church in Ajax, Ontario, Canada, where he says it's not actually cold this year. So hey Chris, thanks for being here.
Hey Alex, thanks man. It's like spring. It's February, but it's like spring. It's pretty awesome.
That's rad. You should move to SoCal. It's like 70 degrees all the time.
Don't tempt me.
All right. So, Chris, I think most of our listeners are probably familiar with you and your blog, which is called Chris from Canada. But if they're not familiar with you and what you do, can you just give us like the 30-second intro to Chris Vacher and family?
Sure. So I've been a worship leader for about 20 years. I met Jesus in high school, and because I was musical, I got involved in worship ministry right away, traveling. I've been on staff at a church in a full-time worship ministry capacity for 10 years, so that's been like the main focus of my life for the last 10 years. I've been on staff at this church for 2 years. I'm the creative arts pastor, so I oversee all of our worship ministry, worship leaders, worship teams. I oversee all of our communication, which is video design, anything that you might like see or hear or feel. And then I oversee our production ministry as well. I'm married for almost 13 years, and we have 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy. And we live on a little house in the country, and we've got chickens. That keeps me busy when I'm not doing church stuff, and get to enjoy the country life a little bit. So that's me.
So the chickens keep you busy when you're not busy, but you're always busy. So,
you know, I need that thing that has no connection to any other part of my life. It's my little meditation. Just go and hang out with chickens and collect eggs, and it's pretty awesome.
That's great, man. So, Chris, when we were talking about what to talk about on this episode, you had brought up the idea of like everything that a worship leader should be focusing on between Sundays. And I had a hard time wrapping my brain around that because there are so many things that worship leaders should be focusing on between Sundays. Like, I mean, leading worship from the stage, singing songs is an important part of what we do, but it's hardly the whole picture, right? And so what I'd like you to do right now is maybe just give us the laundry list, like, of the roles and responsibilities. Paint a vivid picture of what the life of a worship leader should look like, and all the various things we have to do between Sundays.
Yeah, I guess the Sunday part is like it's the part of the iceberg you see above water, and everything else below that. And sort of, you know, whether you're a full-time worship leader, like this is your full-time gig and you can give full-time attention to it, or you do it as a volunteer, sort of doesn't matter. That how you invest your time between Sundays, the evidence of that will show on Sunday morning, whether you're leading. So it's everything, I'm thinking about somebody full-time. So it's everything from like managing emails, scheduling teams, choosing songs, working with your pastor, being in staff meeting, making sure the stage is set up and ready to go, doing pro presenter, working out planning center, making sure other people on your staff team know what's happening. Maybe there's you're doing communion or you're doing baptism. You got to make sure there's people to serve communion, and you need the tank set up. I mean, there's just that's just a laundry list, and that's just every Sunday, 52 times a year. On top of that, it's like, okay, now we're going to do a series design, or we've got Easter coming, or we're doing a night of worship, or we might do some songwriting together as a team, or there's a guest. You start to get into these bigger event stuff. And then it's like, okay, am I going to be here long term? Am I thinking out a year, 2 years, 5 years? How are we developing people? How are we mentoring people? If there's other worship leaders how are we equipping them? If there's people on our team, how are we building a relationship with them and developing community? How are we equipping our artists to serve really well? How am I equipping myself, or how am I being equipped? Who are my mentors? 5 years from now, what's my job going to look like? So there's above the water of the iceberg, the part that people see on Sunday is, can you put a set together of 4 songs, maybe a scripture reading? Can you transition really well? Can you do a key change? Can you lead a team? All of that. But there's, once you're in the job, or even if you're a volunteer worship leader, you learn pretty quickly that, those hours spent between Sundays, if you can invest them really, really well, the effectiveness on Sunday is maximized more than you could ever imagine.
Man, that's a huge list, and it could keep going, right? Yep. I mean, vision caster, culture protector, meeting agenda planner. I mean, there are so many roles to our responsibilities and so many hats we have to wear. One of the things you said at the end, though, was how we use our time between Sundays will determine our effectiveness on Sundays. So I want to ask you a question, Chris. Out of all of that, what are, let's say 3 or maybe 4 of the top things that the most effective worship leaders do?
So I'll say these, and don't hold them in order of priority. How's that? So the things that I say is, the first thing isn't necessarily the most important, but I'd say these things are important. So I would say the most effective worship leaders I know, and maybe the opposite, the ones that I have seen where the effectiveness has not lasted, is when the investment in personal discipleship is primary. So don't ever get in the trap of professional Christianity. I'm a leader, I'm up front, I'm spending time choosing songs, I'm talking to my pastor about the passage that he's preaching from. That's never, ever a replacement. It's actually a terrible replacement for personal relationship with Jesus. Why would you ever give up the personal intimacy and the personal relationship and personal time spent in relationship with the God of the universe who knows you and loves you and wants to be with you? And why would you give that up for, in a sense, the facade of what you put on Sunday and just giving out to other people? And the effectiveness of Sunday is made most effective when it comes from the most honest place. So, for me, that's spend time in personal worship away from preparing for Sunday. So, ministry, this Levitical role of just ministry before the Lord. And so in your office, in a room at your house, on stage, sometimes I'll just go to the platform in our auditorium, nobody's in there, and I'll just get up my guitar and sing and just worship the Lord. I like being in our auditorium to do that, or I'll do it at home or wherever. But just personal worship, for sure, personal time in Scripture outside of the passage that your pastor is preaching. Just believe that God is going to speak to you through His Word, because that's what He does. Have personal mentors and people who know you and love you and are in relationship with you for more than what you do on Sunday. It's huge, and I can't give too much weight to that. I think that's really important. And the inverse is true. The ones that I've seen who have lost effectiveness, and some friends of mine who've been in worship ministry who even walked away from ministry, walked away from the Lord. That's the piece that was missing. It became about the Sunday. It became about the bit of the iceberg that was above the water and not what was underneath. Yeah. So I'd say that's a huge one.
Can I speak into that? That's like you're saying you have made your relationship with Christ a professional matter. Your job, the fact that you have to stand in front of people on Sunday, is motivating you to spend time with God. So your job is fueling your relationship with God rather than your relationship with God being something that fuels your ministry. That's where the starting point is, and that's what you're saying is the difference. And I'll be honest, I've been there. I've been in that place where it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta stand on the stage Sunday. I gotta make sure that I'm reading my Bible, and that's the backwards way of looking at it. It needs to be something that's real and private and personal that overflows and spills out into effective ministry. And that's what you're saying. Effective worship leaders spend time with Christ in private when no one's watching, and it doesn't really count for anything.
Yeah, and there's probably seasons of that. I think we can all look, if you've been doing this long enough, you can all look back to seasons in life where, man, that was, and so there's an ebb and a flow. But if we get to say where's the priority, we get to choose first relationship with Christ, personal relationship. And I mean, I think it's true. I think the idea of trading that for public ministry leadership is a terrible trade. Even just in the economics of it, it's just the benefit of it. It can't be understated. And you can't give enough weight, especially if you're thinking longevity and people who were really called to this for a long time. It's got to come out of that personal discipleship, personal relationship with the Lord first, always. Second thing I'd say, effectiveness is, we talked about this a little bit, but I always am thinking about how do I lead people, and not just on Sundays again, but like in my office, in my work environment. If you're a volunteer, how are you leading people in relationship? But I always think of like leading down, leading across, and leading up. Leading up would be with my senior pastor, with my lead pastor. How do I manage expectations on what's possible, what's achievable, what's realistic with timelines and budget and people. And so just managing relationship and managing expectations really well that way. Leading across with other staff, other leaders, keeping them excited and informed about what's happening in our services. At our church, Sunday is a big deal for us. Not all churches make Sunday a big deal. We make Sunday a big deal because it's the one time of the week where our whole church family gets together. We have 2 services at one location. We have 1 service at another location. So we're not literally all in the same room together, but it's like a little family reunion every Sunday. And so I want to make sure that our staff are excited about that they're aware of what's happening. If there's changes in what we normally do or where we're going with Sundays, I want to make sure they're in on that. And then leading down, and that's not in a condescending way, but if you're a leader, it's because you're asked to lead people. And so how do I lead in my world that's like other staff or other leaders or teams of people? How am I setting vision and setting expectation? How am I helping us move forward? And am I looking out, 4 months or 6 months or 12 months and thinking about where we're going and starting to set up some conversations? Or if things are getting stale, how do I lead? Maybe we need to go somewhere else and see something, or maybe we need to read a book together, or maybe we need to whatever it is. But how am I consciously not just getting people to fill roles and to do a job, whether that's paid or volunteer? How do I get them excited about what God's doing and help to lead them and develop them so that ultimately they will then lead and develop others, and so that multiplication.
So that's the second one. First one, spiritual, making sure your spiritual walk is vibrant and real, leading others up, down, left, right.
Yeah, and then I would say that the third thing in terms of effectiveness is like, don't ever stop learning. And I'm an information junkie. That's part of social media for me. If people track me on social media, they know I'm always sharing stuff because I'm always looking to learn. I never, ever, ever in my life want to get to a place where I feel like I figured it out and now I'm just, just turning the gears and spitting out Sundays. I always want to be learning. So I'm always reading. We were talking about this earlier. I have a book list every year. My goal in life is to every year read more than I read the year before. And so I just build an Amazon checkout cart, and then a few times a year I'll buy a bunch of books because I want to stay sharp. I want to read from other people who are further along from me and wiser than me. I want to read also from people who are younger than me and thinking about new ways to do it and reading about what is God doing in a younger generation and what are some of the things that God's speaking. Because we've gone through this kind of modern worship movement, and now the guys who broke through, kind of my age, mid-30s, late 30s, now we're the same age as the people who got pushed out 20 years ago, and I don't necessarily think that was done real well. And so how do we not hold on to our models, but how do we open opportunity for what God is doing in a younger generation? I'm seeing some things I'm really excited about. So, be reading, be engaged online. There's unbelievable access to people like never before. Who are the mentors that you're learning from? I have mentors in my life. Some of them I only talk to a couple times a year, but they're mentors via social media or via email or via phone, whatever. Don't ever, ever, ever stop learning. Just look for ways to learn from people who are doing things better or different from you.
All right. So let's say someone's listening and they're like, okay, I'll start learning. Tell me what to learn. Give us 4 books that you are like hands down best for worship leaders to read.
Okay, so here are my 4 that I give when I get asked that question. Worship Matters by Bob Coughlin, Vertical Church by James McDonald, Worship by the Book by D.A. Carson, and Unceasing Worship by Harold Best. Now, I say all 4 of those not because I believe wholeheartedly in every word on every page, but for me, those give a real full-figured view of what we do on Sundays. But I'm tempted now to add a 5th book, which I just read yesterday, and it's from Bob Coughlin as well, called True Worshipers. I read it yesterday in one sitting, and it was just like, I could not put it down. It's incredible. And I think that book is going to get onto my list of must-reads, True Worshipers by Bob Coughlin. So there's 5.
That's awesome. Dude, that's really good. Okay, so you gave us 3 things that effective worship leaders do between Sundays. Are there more? Do you feel like there's other things that you could add to that list?
Oh, man. I think the list is never ending. Really thinking about, I always encourage worship ministry people, how long is your perspective? So the church that you're serving at now, are you planning to be there 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years? And then how long is your calling? Do you believe God has called you for the rest of your life into worship ministry? So when we went in 2005 to our previous church, we went in and I told the search team, I said, listen, if you're looking for somebody to come here for 2 years to help kind of set things on course and then leave, do not hire me. Because if we're coming here, we're staying until God kills us or calls us somewhere else. And after 8 years, God called us somewhere else. Very, very clearly, God called us somewhere else. And now the church where I said the same thing to them. I said, listen, do not bring me if your expectation is 2 years, 3 years. Our intent is to be here until God kills us or calls us somewhere else. So I have 30 years of perspective. What that allows then is to say, okay, my plan is to be here when I'm 60, 65, 70. I don't need to get my way right away. If something can't happen in 30 days or 6 months, I'm okay with that. I've got patience, because what's 6 months in the context of 30 years? It changes how I invest in relationships with people. Musicians who might not hit a performance mark that I want them. I've got all kinds of patience with them, because my hope for them is that they'll be part of our team for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So if there's one Sunday when life is crazy and they didn't sleep great and they missed a key change, I'm not going to go slap them upside the head, because listen, man, like, you are still here and you're part of the team, and part of the team means we carry each other and we get back on the horse and we come back the next Sunday that you're on and we keep going, because I want you to be here 5 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. And then also I think that changes how you think about how you are being developed as a leader. So, gets back to that idea of who are your mentors, spending time listening to the kinds of questions that people are asking you. What are people coming to you for advice? I find that a lot of times God uses other people asking questions to help direct paths. And so, is it about, I've got to be the best musician I can be because I'm going to be a musical leader in our church? Or is it about, I really need some theological training because I'm moving more into like a teaching role? Or is it about, like, for me, I always want to be very collaborative and in relationship, and that works out for us in songwriting. So I want to get better as a songwriter. I want to write with better songwriters. I want to get better as a collaborator in relationship. So spending time thinking about that too, like how long is your perspective, and that changes how you interact with people Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, no, that's good. Vision is a huge word in that whole scenario that you painted. Your vision long term, but then the ability to cast that vision for your teams and for the people you work with, and leading up, like you said, to your pastors, casting that vision, getting them on board. Yeah, effective worship leaders have vision. Without vision, the people perish, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's so key. And a couple of things you said in there really pointed to relationships and shepherding people and pastoring people. And obviously that is a huge part of our role as worship leaders, because the people that we sing with on Sundays are also the people that, we live with and walk through life with, and sometimes they go through hardships, sometimes they're in sin, sometimes they need to be confronted on something, other times they need to be encouraged. How do you, as an effective worship leader, worship pastor, how do you pastor your people? What does that look like? Do you have team nights where you get together once a month? Are you shooting them emails? Are you, discipling people one-on-one? Talk to us a little bit about your pastoring methods.
Yeah, and this is where it might break down a little, because it's not, every church is going to be different. And in my case, I'm in a full-time staff role overseeing multiple staff, multiple departments. But I think the principles here are the same. So, relationship is key. When I came on staff here 2 years ago, one of the first things I did was I went out for lunch with every single person who served in our worship ministry. At the time, it was about 35 people. And so it took me a few months to get through the list, but that was really the first thing I did, and that was just to start relationship with them, to let them get to know me a little bit, to ask them about their experience serving worship at our church, and then was able to get sort of a full picture of who our team is and getting to know them. We do team nights here. We call them creative community nights, and we do them about 6 or 8 times a year. Some places who do team night, it's every week and it's connected to rehearsal, or every month. We found in our context, every couple months ish works for us. So those are just a chance for us to build community among creative volunteers across our whole church, and then to build creative values across our whole church. So we spend time in worship together, we spend time in teaching together, we spend time doing workshops and training together, and then we get to encourage one another and pray for one another. So those are huge for us. In our structure, the way we work, we have 4 other worship leaders here, and that's a staff role for us. So that's where a lot of my pastoring happens, is just developing, or not necessarily developing, but like spending time with those leaders, because those leaders are the ones who lead our Sunday mornings, and so they have a shepherding role too with our teams and with our congregation. So that would be like the closest pastoral relationship I have is with them. And then I do have some relationship with our team, but across our whole teams now, we have about 60 people. And so the logistics of that breaks down a little bit. So I encourage our leaders to be in relationship with our teams to be in relationship with one another, and people on our teams to be in what we call connect groups. So if you do small groups or life groups or home groups, because sometimes a serving team can't really be a replacement for that kind of relationship. So we encourage people to be in connect groups. And then I will often, I'll just call people up and say, hey, let's go for lunch. We haven't had time to really just talk, and I really appreciate your investment. So yesterday I took a guy out for lunch, and we just sat across the table, and, how are you doing? What's up this year? What are you excited about? And just staying in relationship with people that way too.
Man, that's really good. So Chris, we talked about the spiritual life being super important. Really learning to be a leader off the stage in your interactions with people. We talked about always being a learner.
Yep.
And pastoring. And I'd say that there's one more thing that is important for worship leaders to be doing in between Sundays, and that is really investing in your family. I think you can't be an effective leader in the church if your family is falling apart. If your family is not being taken care of, if they're not your first priority, your first love, then you're not going to last long term Sunday to Sunday. It'll come crashing down. So I would say make sure, listeners, that you're taking care of your wife and your children, or your husband if you're a wife. And Chris, I don't know if you want to speak into that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes to, if you're being interviewed for a role and it gets to talking about salary, if you're married, make sure you have that conversation with your spouse before you say yes to a salary, because there are salary implications. And I find often churches don't really know what to pay people, and they want the most effectiveness from the least investment. There's a business side to it. And so a lot of times staff will get locked in at a salary that's really just unfair, and it's not sustainable for a family. And there's resentment from day one in the marriage because your spouse is upset that you said yes to a salary that your family can't live on. So I'd say there's that. And I'd say also, like, make sure you got vacation time and make sure you use vacation for vacation and take vacation. If you got holidays, take it. And then build in weekly rhythms. So in my context, Friday is my day off, and Saturday is and we're off Saturdays as well, and back for service on Sunday. So I don't put anything on my calendar Friday night, Saturday morning. Nothing goes on my calendar in those two time slots. Friday night is family night. We make dinner for my kids. They watch a movie. We make popcorn, sit on the couch. We put them to bed. And then Friday night is date night with my wife. And date night is kids are in bed. We make dinner for the two of us. We sit and watch a movie. We don't go out typically. Sometimes we do. But it's date night at home. And then Saturday morning, if you follow me on social media, you know we do Saturday morning pancakes. And we've been doing this for probably, 5 or 6 years. Every Saturday morning, I make pancakes. My kids help me. And we do breakfast together. And just those two things blocked out on my calendar, it helps the rest of the week orient around the business. So I try not to be out too many evenings in the week for meetings, but if I am, I always know I've got those 2 big blocks of time on my calendar every week after week. And then there are other things, like I do one-on-one time with my kids. My wife and I, a few times a year, we'll go away for 2 nights together, just the two of us without our kids. We've got 4 little kids, so time away without them is really important. But you got to figure out for your stage of life, where you are, what you can afford, all of that stuff. You got to block out time on your calendar for family, for sure.
That's good, man. So, Chris, Sunday to Sunday, a lot of stuff that needs to happen between them. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I would say, one of the things I think that's happened in the worship leader role over the last maybe 15 or 20 years, it's gotten so big. And in a sense, we're like victims of our own success because we want lighting and we want graphics and we want tracks in our songs. And so really just as much as you can get into what are the things that are going to give me long-term effectiveness and success. That's relationship with people, that's managing your calendar, that's developing as a leader, always learn. And then kind of orient the rest of what you do around that.
That's really good, man. Chris, if people want to find you online, tell us where, and hopefully they'll connect with you.
Yeah, pretty much everywhere Chris from Canada. So chrisfromcanada.com is my blog. You can search Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Chris from Canada. I've been on Snapchat lately, and I don't really know why I'm on Snapchat, other than it's really fun, and a lot of guys on my team are on Snapchat, so I get to do that. And I think my user on Snapchat is Chris Vacher, and so you can do that, and it's fun, and like post on Snapchat everything you don't post everywhere else because it's fun and it's temporary. But typically, yeah, Chris from Canada, you can find me pretty much anywhere.
Awesome, man. Hey, thanks so much, Chris, for the time, and God bless you and your ministry in Canada. Stay warm.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye. Well, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed that episode with Chris. Chris, thanks for the wisdom. And I hope you noticed how many times Chris said the word leader and leadership. And that's really what we're talking about, is becoming a great leader, not just on the stage, but in the lives of the people that you work with, at your church, in your family. Being a great leader is what's going to make the difference when you actually do stand on the stage. So may God lead you to become a better leader, and may you have a great week this week, and great Sunday as you lead worship, and a great month as you grow as a leader. God bless you guys, and I'll see you next month with another episode.
So won't you carry me